I hated him the first moment I saw him. Maybe hate is too strong a word, but when a man looks you dead in the eye across a crowded office and smirks like he already owns the room and maybe even you know he's trouble. Trouble wrapped in an expensive suit and armed with a sharp tongue. That man was Ethan Cole, the firm's star lawyer, and apparently my new nightmare. When I first got hired as a junior paralegal in downtown Manhattan, I thought the worst part of the job would be the late nights, endless coffee runs, and reading through hundreds of pages of legal jargon. I was wrong. The worst part was Ethan. He wasn't just arrogant. He was the kind of arrogant that made you want to throw a stapler at his head. Every word out of his mouth dripped with confidence and cutting wit. And yet God help Mayhay was beautiful. Not in the pretty boy, forgettable kind of way, but in the striking, makes your heart skip a beat kind of way. Sharp jawline, dark hair always perfectly in place, and those eyes deep and piercing, like they could see right through every excuse you ever made. I hated that I noticed. Our first week working together was a war zone. He'd bark out orders, I'd roll my eyes. He'd correct my research with a smug smile, and I'd fantasize about deleting his files when he wasn't looking. The tension was so thick, even the interns whispered about it. To everyone else, it was a game of wills. To me, it felt like I was slowly drowning under his shadow. But then fate decided to play its cruel trick. It was late one Friday, the city humming outside like it always does, when the rain started pouring harder than I'd ever seen. I'd planned to stay at the office and catch up on paperwork, but Ethan had this big case file he wanted me to help him with. Of course, he didn't ask, he ordered. And like the fool I was, I stayed. By the time we finally wrapped up, the streets were flooding, cabs were impossible to get, and the subway was closed. My apartment was across town, his was only a few blocks away. Don't be stubborn, he said, standing in front of the window, the skyline glowing behind him like some kind of cinematic backdrop. You'll catch pneumonia if you try to walk home in this weather. I wanted to tell him I'd rather swim across the Hudson River than stay with him, but the storm made the choice for me. I followed him, muttering curses under my breath, into his sleek, modern apartment that smelled faintly of cedarwood and expensive cologne. And that's where it happened, the twist no one in their right mind would expect. His apartment had one bedroom, one bed, and thanks to a leaking ceiling in the guest room, there was no couch to crash on. I stood there, staring at the two perfect sheets, my heart racing in a way I refused to admit. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, that damned smirk playing at his lips. Relax, he said softly, almost like he was trying to calm me down. I don't bite, unless you ask me to. I should have been furious. I should have stormed out, rain be damned. Instead, I felt something unravel inside me. Maybe it was the exhaustion, maybe the quiet hum of the storm outside, or maybe it was the way his voice lost its edge for the first time since I'd met him. For one fleeting moment, he looked human, not the arrogant lawyer, not the flawless professional, just a man. We lay on opposite sides of the bed that night, a chasm of unspoken words between us. I thought I'd never fall asleep, but the sound of his steady breathing beside me did something I didn't expect. It comforted me. It reminded me that beneath all the sharp edges, there was warmth. When I woke up, I found him watching me, not with his usual smugness, but with something quieter, something that made my chest ache. Don't look at me like that, I whispered, turning away, but it was too late. The air had shifted, and I knew deep down, whether I wanted to admit it or not, nothing would ever be the same between us again. That was the beginning of a story I never saw coming, a story of fire and friction, of sharp words that turned into softer ones, of a man I swore I despised slowly becoming the one person I couldn't live without. I always thought Ethan Cole would be the man who ruined my career, not the one who ruined my walls. For weeks after that stormy night, everything between us was different. At the office, he still barked orders, still threw his perfect smirk like a weapon, but there were cracks now. Small moments when his voice softened, glances that lingered a little too long. And then, the night of the trial came, the case that had kept us both chained to endless files and late nights. Ethan was brilliant in the courtroom, I'll give him that. Watching him argue was like watching a sword fight. Precise, ruthless, almost beautiful. But behind that sharpness, I saw exhaustion. The kind that comes from carrying too much alone. That night, after the verdict was won, the office celebrated, drinks in hand, laughter filling the air. But Ethan slipped away early. For reasons I couldn't explain, I followed him. I found him alone on the rooftop, tie loosened, staring at the city like it might swallow him whole. "You should be downstairs," I said, my voice quieter than I intended. He turned to me, and for once, there was no armor in his eyes. "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" The question cut deeper than I expected. He wasn't talking about the case. He wasn't talking about the firm. He was talking about us. For weeks I'd told myself the tension between us was just animosity, that the warmth I felt beside him was nothing more than proximity. But standing there, the night air cool against my skin, I realized the truth pretending was exhausting. "I don't want to hate you anymore," I admitted, the words escaping before I could stop them. Something flickered in his gaze. He stepped closer, slow enough that I could have stopped him if I wanted to. But I didn't. Not when his hand brushed mine. Not when he leaned in like the world itself was holding its breath. The first kiss wasn't fire, it was a tremor. A quiet shattering of walls. A confession made without words. It was only when I felt his lips tremble against mine that I understood how long he'd been holding back, too. After that night, things weren't magically perfect. We still argued, still clashed in ways that made the interns exchange nervous glances. But now there was something underneath it, Alan, understanding. A pull neither of us could deny. One evening, weeks later, after another long day, I found myself back in that same bed in his apartment. Except this time I wasn't on the far edge. This time I was in his arms. "Do you regret it?" I asked softly, staring at the ceiling, afraid of the answer. His hand tightened around mine. "The only thing I regret is waiting this long." And just like that, the arrogant lawyer I thought I hated became the man who held me like I mattered. We weren't perfect. He still drove me insane, still made me want to strangle him during arguments. But he also knew how to pull me back from the edge, how to quiet my fears with nothing more than a look. And maybe that's what love really isn't, the absence of conflict, but the choice to stay, to fight, to hold on. Months later, as the spring sun rose over New York, I watched him standing on that rooftop again, the same place where everything had changed. He turned toward me, and this time, there was no hesitation in his smile. "Come here," he said, holding out his hand. And for once, I didn't think twice. I stepped forward, into his arms, into the life we were building together, messy, imperfect, but ours. Because sometimes fate doesn't just throw you into the same bed. Sometimes it gives you the chance to choose whether you'll stay there when morning comes. And I chose him. Every time. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.